Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner that has a product, service, or message that you truly believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind the scenes look at real world networking and marketing tactics while leveraging LinkedIn to get what you have in front of many more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode. Obviously, we have another interview episode coming at you. Two reasons why I'm excited. Number one, I have a fellow LinkedIn lover on the podcast today, and we're obviously going to dive into all of that. But also, most importantly, helping people through talent solutions, whether that is finance, sales, marketing, operations. Nancy and I believe in an army of two is twice as strong as an army of one. And, you will get to a point in your business where you may need some outside help. You may need outside staffing or outsourcing to help with sales and help with, marketing and operations and finance and all of those things. And a lot of people don't know where to turn, but obviously, after today's episode, you're going to know exactly where you should turn. So, Daniel Seligman, welcome to today's episode.
Thank you, Scott, for the intro. I think you've done this a couple times. That was pretty smooth, covered a lot of bases, put a couple phrases out there. LinkedIn lovers, I don't hear very often, but there's definitely a small niche of us who do that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you having me on. I've consumed a lot of your content specific to business and
Thank you.
LinkedIn and stuff like that. So excited to be on and have a conversation with you.
Man, me as well. Listen, we're getting close to 700 episodes, so it's something that I'm very grateful for, and this podcast has been such a passion project of mine, getting to meet great people like you. And I just appreciate the kind words. And again, grateful to have you here today. So we have a lot to talk about today. Before we get into, obviously, your positive feelings and thoughts on LinkedIn and how it's kind of helped you elevate Talently, which is your company, I do want to talk about Talently itself. But I would say before we move into those subtopics, what I'm always interested in learning first, and if you've ever listened to the podcast, I love opening the episodes with this question, that if Dan could go back in time, rewind the business tape, so to speak, and press stop at a moment where you feel that was kind of like the jumping off point for you, or the catalytic moment for you that kind of set you on this path that you're on, what did that moment look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question, and there's a couple sides of that of when the journey and transition happened to starting my own business and becoming a founder. But the other side of it is when did the transition happen to start being vocal on social and building my audience and following, which is two interesting. They weren't direct parallels, but helped each other. But just for context to the audience. My background, and I started my career over a decade ago in B2B SaaS sales at the bottom. SDR, entry level sales, and over 10 years, I grew it to the executive level as a VP of a tech company. I'm based here in Toronto, Canada. So grinding my way up and making my way through the ladder was part of that journey, and really putting my efforts and focus first through that. But there was a position point in the middle once I got to sort of the director level in sales. Is I always had a sort of underlying feeling that I wanted to start something on my own, and I wanted to have ownership in something. And once you get to the management level, I don't know about you, but a lot of entry level employees sort of look at the executive team, or at least I did, and I'm like, oh, these people are smarter than me. These people know more than me. They're the only ones who can run businesses. I'd never be able to do it. As you get your chops and grow your career, I think you start to realize that it's more of a even playing field than you think. And once you start growing a business, understand the ins and outs, I started to grow belief that I could and will run my own business eventually. Now, when it comes to the idea and what I wanted to do, that what takes me to Talently, which is my company I run now. That took a lot of iteration of figuring it out. But I think growing your career and seeing other sides of businesses was sort of the tipping point. I'd say 5 or 6 years through my career of like, one, I can do this. And two, it's not as scary as you might think it is. And that sort of transitions also to the social side of business, because I was always a consumer and not a producer. And one of my jobs, I was the director of sales for a company in Toronto here called Platters, which is now called Thriver. And we brought on an executive one of the most impressive women I've ever worked with in my life. Her name is, give her a shout out, Megan Bowen. She's the CEO of an agency now called Refined Labs. And at the time, she had a huge presence on LinkedIn. She's posting all the time. She had a huge following. And really, I asked her of like, hey, why do you do this? Like, how did this come to be? And what value do you see of this? And I remember she said to me, she's like, if I could go back in time, I would have started this from the beginning of my career. The amount of introductions, value, opportunities that have come from just posting general information, stories that may seem very common to me, but can provide value to the audience, has brought her so much value. And from that conversation, it again triggered to me of like, hey, it started to be a contributor. I have 10 years, whatever, how many years experience at the time. And all that knowledge I had about sales and SaaS and B2B was normal to me, but I realized it wasn't as accessible or available to other people. So for 2 years straight, I posted on LinkedIn once a week. So 104 posts. And I grew my audience, my followers to about 18,000 followers. And really, it was one, a great accountability method. Two, it was an amazing way to build connections and create opportunities for myself, consulting opportunities, networking opportunities. But three, it was an amazing skill honing experience of like, one, posting content, you just got to press publish. If it's good, people will read it and you'll get exposure. If it's bad, no one will read it and you won't have any exposure. So who really cares if it's bad? And then it was really a great way for me to hone my skills as a writer and thinker and problem solver. So those are sort of my two pivot points that allowed me to put myself in the founder mindset, but also allowed me to create a sort of social presence for myself. And LinkedIn has been a catalyst for my business and my personal career growth. So I can't speak more highly enough about it.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point that, people think that they have to post all the time. You know, I always remind people that LinkedIn is not like Facebook. It's not like Instagram. You don't have to post 6 times an hour, 6 times a minute, 6 times a day. You made a really good point there that, you posted once a day for 2 years straight, and it took you from a very minimal following to almost 20,000 in 2 years, which is
Yeah.
significant growth.
Not even once a week. It wasn't even once a day at that point. It was once a week. So
That's
less than
amazing.
that. Yeah.
So looking back at your time, working for someone else, and you had, many different roles. Was there a specific lesson that you learned working for someone else that enabled you to obviously step into your own power and being a founder yourself that has enabled you to grow your company the way that you have?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a specific role or specific project, specific company, but I think it was an amalgamation of a bunch of them. And I think one thing that I did really successfully in my career, and will encourage anyone to listen to this, is if you do have that entrepreneurial passion, if you do have that inclining of starting your own business, um, whenever you have opportunities to take on new tasks or try new projects that you're most likely going to fail, take that opportunity. And I found it really created a sense of creativity with myself in my job. My one of my first sales jobs I had was for an ed tech company, and we had a new product offering. It was digital textbooks, and we didn't even have a digital textbook at the time. But I put my hand up to be part of the sales team and lead that sales department. It took a really long time to get any traction and make some sales, but we had to take a new approach, sales pitch, strategy, prospecting, marketing, everything to it. And I got to be a part of all of that and have my finger on everything. Did it allow me to grow my career if I stayed in my old role? Probably not. I would have made more money if I stayed in my old role, but it was an amazing skill gathering exercise. And now with running my own business, I started it at zero with nothing and not knowing what to do. So I sort of use the same skills and experience that I gained in other roles to say, hey, let's just go from A to B. Let's not focus on A to Z or A to Z, depending where you're listening to this. Let's just go from A to B. Let's figure out who our clients are. Let's figure out our messaging. Let's reach out to clients. Let's book our first meeting. Okay, we booked our first meeting. Let's book our first deal. Let's get our first deal. Let's get our first referral. Let's do our first onboarding. So it's sort of just taking that step-by-step approach and realizing that it is kind of cliche, but 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But if you don't take the steps, you can't go forward or backwards. So you got to just go.
I totally agree. And there's learning lessons and all of that. I'm a big believer in that your failures are obviously lessons of how to learn how to succeed, and you can't succeed without failing first. So let's talk about Talently, because Nancy and I completely believe in outsourcing when it's the appropriate time. So this is kind of like a two-prong question. So first, is, how did Talently come about? Because um, you do offshore um, outside talent acquisition, whether it's sales help, operations, marketing, but you specifically outsource to, and your company is leveraged around South Africa, which I think is really incredible. I have such a soft spot for people that really do seek to give so many other people opportunity. Just like there's a lot of companies that, focus on, Western culture, Europe, wherever. So how did you end up landing with your Talently company, utilizing the talents of those in South Africa, number one? And I would say the other prong to the question would be, when is it an appropriate time for someone to start to outsource? Because Dan, I'm sure you've heard and you know the horror stories of people that try to grow too quickly and they think that they can grow by outsourcing and hiring team, bringing people on. And if the company revenue is not there and the expenses supersede the revenue, you're out of business before you even get started. So I know that
Yeah.
was a lot. So let's start with the first question and then we'll obviously move on to the second
Yeah, for
prong.
sure. So no, those are two good questions, very different of sort of the origin story and then the strategy behind it in terms of actually the clients and taking advantage of the service. So yeah, the backstory, and I'll try to keep it relatively brief, but my background, as I mentioned, has been in B2B SaaS for over a decade, and most of them have been VC backed companies, fancy offices, nice laptops, lunches, all that great stuff, which is great. But my most recent company I was with was a bootstrap business. And I joined that business and really thought it was an amazing product, amazing team. And I really wanted to see what the bootstrapping world was. I quickly realized when you're bootstrapped, it's kind of a fancy word for calling yourself poor in business. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of capital, you have to grow very strategically, and you have to grow profitably. So when I was at this company, I was there for 3 years as their VP of sales. It really gave me a first row seat into what it looks like to grow profitably, but also gave me a first row seat of the value of offshore employees. We were a Toronto based business, but we had people on the teams all across the world. We had people in Brazil, Spain, Romania. We had people in Pakistan who supported us. We had people in Ukraine. Like we had talent all around the world. So within that company, I was never really exposed to the idea of using offshore talent. And I saw the value in doing this, but the other side of it is I also saw the pain and issues associated with using offshore staff. And that's what really came to Talently, is it came to my mind that the globalization of talent is inevitable. The world is becoming smaller. COVID has sped up remote work, and people are open to working with and hiring talent all across the world. So globalization of talent is inevitable, but not all talent has made themselves equal. And through my process and through my experience, I realized that there was two huge issues when it came to offshore talent. And I went to go solve those problems. And the two issues that I saw was, one, every country we worked with had a language barrier problem. English was not their first language. That creates a lot of friction internally within a business, but it also creates a lot of friction externally whenever there's client facing roles or emails or whatever it may be. Problem number one. Problem number two is I found a lot of the cultures or countries that we worked with really had different critical thinking skills, business acumen, and services. It just wasn't in the same nature of North American business. People in Spain take the whole summer off. Some countries take siestas. Some people have different working hours and expectations and training and stuff like that. And I really couldn't find a great place to be able to solve both those problems. And with Talently, and when I started this business, I went on the pursuit of solving for these issues. My initial business idea was horrible. When I started the business, my idea was I'm going to source talent anywhere in the world. And I spun up 10 recruiting teams and recruiters all around the world in different countries to say, hey, we'll find you talent anywhere in the world. Don't do that. It was a logistical nightmare. As time zones were a mess, tracking was a mess. It just didn't work out. But what I quickly realized is in the first few batches of clients, there was one talent pool that ran circles around everybody else. My clients wanted to speak to them. My clients wanted to hire them. And I said, screw this. I'm scrapping all other countries and we're going all in on this one country. That happens to be South Africa. And that's what brings us to today. We went all in on South Africa. And the funniest thing about this is my mother's from South Africa. Half of my family's from South Africa. So I should have thought about this sooner. And she still kills me to this day that I didn't think about it right off the bat. But South Africa, when you think about it and take a step back, it makes so much sense, right? Native English speaking country. Everyone speaks perfect English, their first language. Highly educated. 7 of the top 10 universities in the entire continent of Africa are in South Africa. And it's the business hub of Africa. It's sort of like the New York and Toronto of London of Africa. That's where business operates from. So everyone's sort of wired for business, has that, and grows up in that environment. Unfortunately for South Africans, the economy and the currency is not very good. So it's extremely common now for South Africans to work for foreign companies in North America, in the UK, in Germany, wherever it may be, on their clients' local time zones. So for us with Talently, we're the people who make that happen. We do the recruiting, we do the sourcing, and then we actually have a South African company where we actually will employ the employees. So we take care of their employment contract, payroll, taxes. We have an office in Johannesburg. We give them a dedicated desk, laptop, monitor, headset. We do everything. And these employees all work full time for our North American clients on their time zone on a one-on-one basis only for them. And luckily, because of the currency discrepancy, South African talent is 50, 60, 70% cheaper than North American talent. And the amazing thing for that is when we get someone a job working for a North American company, the North American clients are saving 50, 60, 70% on salaries. The South Africans are getting access to new jobs that pay much higher than if they were getting a job in South Africa. So a lot of our employees are getting new jobs, getting promotions, and are excited about these opportunities. And we have a revenue model built into it. So it's really a win-win-win, win for the client, win for the employee, and win for us. So that's the sort of backstory and iteration of how this business came to be.
I love that. So again, I'm just a big fan of opportunity for other people. Now, there's a lot of companies out there, outside of you employing South Africans for mostly North American businesses. There's a lot of staffing and recruiting companies out there. If someone was to ask you what truly makes Talently most unique and most different from other companies out there, what really makes it stand out, and who's the right person to work with you guys? Because again, my wife and I believe that you should not want to work with everyone.
Yeah.
The notion of, oh, we can help everybody. Well, in a perfect world, sure, but in the real world, no. There's a specific core demographic of people that you should be working with that you're going to get the best results for. So how would you answer both those questions?
Yeah, 100%. It's a really good point. And from our perspective, we're a talent-driven business. Like our talent speaks for themselves. They're the ones who are getting the jobs done. They're the ones with the amazing experience and work ethic. With that being said, South Africa is a talent pool. It's a country of 66 million people, so there's talent everywhere. But there are things that South Africans are world class at, and things that they're not so world class at. So, from a role and talent perspective, if you came to me and said you're looking for 5 machine learning engineers, I would say don't go to South Africa. I would say go to the US, go to Russia, Ukraine, like some Eastern European country or India or something like that, where the engineering talent is really high. With that being said, South Africa is world class in 4 departments and 4 talent areas. Is really finance, support, so executive assistants, customer success, support reps, sales, SDRs, account executives, and marketing. Really anything across marketing, graphic design, SEO, paid ads, whatever it may be. And from the finance perspective, chartered accountants, bookkeepers, accounts receivable, accounts payable, all that kind of stuff. The talent is incredible, extremely well trained. We have one of our clients has a CA who used to work at Ernst & Young. And she was in South Africa, worked for Ernst & Young. Now she works for our client in Canada, and they love her. And the talent level is amazing. It's a perfect match. So the talent is extremely high in those categories. And to your, I guess, earlier question about timing, this is very client dependent, but from a 10,000-foot view, our best matches are in those talent areas. And the best matches from a client perspective is really industry agnostic. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, but is really more about the company size and structure. If this is a 2-person startup with you and your founder, and you're looking for your next senior person to come in with no structure, and you're not going to set them up for success, hire someone in your backyard. you're just setting someone up offshore with the chance to fail. If you're a company of 20 people, 50 people, you have a playbook, you know what you need to do, and you're really looking to grow the team and add to your stack, that is an amazing time to start looking at it offshore if you're looking to grow profitably. It's interesting in the company, the business world, especially in tech, for years and years and years, it was really cool to raise a ton of money, burn the house down, and spend as much money as you can, hire super expensive employees, give them crazy perks, set them up in an amazing office. The dialogue has changed. It's cool now to be profitable. And guess how you're not going to be profitable? Hiring really expensive, non-producing talent. But if you can find budget-friendly, cost-effective talent that can help you produce at a very high level, you're going to be able to create huge margins in your business and grow through yourself and not have to be at the beck and call of VCs or private equity. You can go and fund your own growth. And that's the game that I want to play and the business that I want to build. So profitability is cool. But from a company perspective, once you're at a certain size where you have a playbook, you need to bring in knowledge worker and talent to grow. That is really the time to do it. 10, 20, 30, 50 employees, whatever it may be. And anything above that, there's value to be had in offshore staffing.
And for some reason, I'm into two-pronged questions today. I have no idea why. So, another two-pronged question. Um, First, where do you see yourself and Talently going in the next, 12 to 24 months? Like, what are the big plans for you guys? And I would say, second to that, obviously, outsourcing is becoming more and more of a need for people that, don't want full-time employees. They want to work smarter, not harder. They want to keep their profits and their ROI, obviously in the right scope. So where do you see Talently going as a company, but also where do you see the outsourcing industry and the outsourcing profession, much like the space that you're in, where do you see that moving into the future as well?
Yeah, for sure. So on the Townley side, we're in a very unique position, right? In the world of offshoring and thinking about talent remotely, the natural gravitation from the industry is go to the cheapest markets. India, Pakistan, Philippines, those have been around forever. When you call into Amex or you call into Bell or AT&T or whatever it may be, those support people are sitting in one of those countries. And that's fine. If you're looking for the cheapest talent and you want to go there, that's perfectly fine. I believe the offshoring industry and the outsourcing industry is going to knowledge workers. And it is not the cheapest talent. If you're looking for the cheapest talents, go to those markets. If you're looking for the best value talent and true knowledge workers who are going to contribute as employees to your company, South Africa is the best value market in the entire world due to the reasons that I stated earlier. So, from our side of it, we are playing in the largest industry of the entire world, employment. So the market is limitless and is always changing and growing. But the piece of the pie when it comes to offshoring staff for North American companies that South Africa occupies right now is relatively small compared to the other countries when people think about offshoring. So my job and my goal is to work with amazing companies to hire amazing talent in South Africa and grow the presence of South Africa when it comes to offshoring and outsourcing roles with North American businesses. So that is our main focus in growing the business. So for the next 12 to 24 months is really about growing the South African brand first. If we can grow the South African brand and people can have exposure to that talent level, our brand will grow alongside it. And we'll be able to grow, fill more roles, make more connections, get a bigger office, open up in multiple cities, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, our job is to get amazing jobs for amazing people in South Africa. So that's the side of the Talently and where we're going. And then to your point of like where the industry is going in general, this is growing at breakneck speed. I think it's going to go bigger and faster. And I think the nuances to the industry are going to change very dramatically in terms of what roles people expect offshore. It's going to be hourly, it's going to be contract workers, it's going to be full-time employees. I think it's going to be very dynamic to understand where the industry is going to go. But it's kind of like a gateway drug. Our clients are in two very distinct buckets. You've either done offshore staffing or currently do offshore staffing today and you're not satisfied with your talent or you're looking to upgrade or grow the team, or you've heard of it and you've never done it before and you don't even know where to start. And that second bucket, when it comes to heard of it and don't know where to start, is just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And then once people see that this talent is amazing, these people deliver and can get it done, it's going to validate the market even further. It's going to continue to grow. And I think everyone has hesitancy when it comes to trying new things. But when you try something new and it works, people talk about it, people double down on it, continue to grow with that, especially if it's going to help your profit margins within your business. So I think from an industry perspective, I think it's more about just cracking the seal and getting exposure to as many people as possible. And yeah, the opportunity is endless.
I love that. And yeah, I just love, where the future of business is going, whether it is offshore staffing or AI or whatever. I believe that there's evolution in every type of business, and you have to lean into those evolutions instead of leaning away from them. So, Dan, before I get to my final question, if someone listening to this podcast is really interested in finding more about Talently and how some of your offshore staffing could help them and their business grow and scale, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, for sure. So best way to get in contact with me directly, feel free to reach out. LinkedIn, connect with me, Daniel Seligman, founder of Talently. If you want to email me, dan@talently.com. If you want to check out the website, hirewithtalently.com is our website. So feel free to reach out to me directly or the company directly. We'll make sure that we're taking care of you. Mention that you came from the Scott Aaron podcast in the form that we reach out. We'll make sure we take good care of you. But yeah, we're a human business, so it's human connections. I don't want you to message an AI robot or chatbot or anything like that. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, check out our website, fill in a form, and our team will reach out to you directly.
Awesome. Love that. And, all the information that Dan just shared obviously will be in the show notes, the description of this episode, and the email broadcast that goes out. So you're not going to have to look too far. So, Dan, final question before we sign off today. What does success truly mean to you?
If you asked me this question when I was an employee, the answer would be different. But now that I'm a founder, I have kids at home, I'm getting a little bit older. Success to me is synonymous with control. Control my business, control my schedule, control my stress. And success for me is not a monetary value, is not a number in my bank account. It's really being able to wake up, enjoy what you do, control your own schedule, take time with my kids, go for a run if I want to midday. And that is a successful life. That's a successful business. And I think that's a successful way for anyone to live. And my biggest encouragement to anyone who's going to listen to that, if you have a sort of thought in the back of your head about starting your own business, becoming an entrepreneur, controlling your own destiny, and getting out of the employee world, which is perfectly fine. If you want to stay in there, it's an amazing place to be. But if you do have that background thought, just take the first step. Try something small, test it out, try to make $10 online. And if it fits great with you, go from there. If I can help out, reach out to me directly, because it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life in terms of taking this leap of faith. But success for me is the idea of controlling your own destiny and time.
Love that. And, I think the big thing for me is I've never actually heard someone mention control and then leveraging that into all of those things, because we do want to have control of our schedule, our life, our time, so we can spend it with those that we wanted to. So I really like how you paraphrased how control is what success meant, because it does bleed into everything else. So, Dan, I just wanted to thank you again for being here today. Number one, for sharing all of the knowledge that you share with my audience, but two, being a founder of a business that is helping so many people that may not have the opportunities that we do have here in North America, and giving those people a great opportunity. I just want to commend you on that. I know the audience will as well. And above all else, just really grateful to connect with you and have you on the podcast here today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, if it's one of your followers gets value out of this, then I think it was successful. And you never know where the networking connections are going to go. So if anyone's interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me directly. And yeah, Scott, I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So again, all the information on Dan and Talently will be in the show notes, the description, and the email that went out. Please feel free to reach out to him. It can't hurt. It can only help. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you could, please support this podcast by hopping over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any place that you're listening to this, leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved most and what you would like to hear more of. But also, if you would like to learn how to take your business to the next level, whether it's using LinkedIn or working directly with myself and Nancy in our intimate group coaching programs, you can head over to www.thetimetogrowth.com or scottaaron.net to learn more. Thank you again for your support, love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you soon.